I miss the old Sea of Thieves, but I don't resent the new one. As with any game like this that gets sweeping updates on a routine basis, the identity of the game has shifted. Minecraft is not the game it used to be, Cuisine Royale is not even called that anymore, and Sea of Thieves is undeniably different than it was when it first set sail. In most ways, I think it is simply a better game now. There's more to do, more fun to be had, and a much larger variety of ways to spend your time in the game. It's more streamlined, respects your time more, and has some really interesting lore and story stuff that wasn't there at all at launch. I still enjoy the game a lot. And yet, I struggle with my feelings about the game. I miss the simplicity of Sea of Thieves in 2018. I miss the earnest passion I had for the game. And I miss the way it made me feel. It's difficult to reconcile the way I used to feel with the way I feel now. It's hard not to feel disappointed in myself that I don't enjoy it the same way anymore. I feel as though I failed myself because I couldn't sustain constant excitement. I don't think we should go back, but I do miss the old Sea of Thieves. I think my personal history with the game is the best place to start. In 2018, me and some good friends had our eye on the game up to launch. It seemed like a fun time, but at this point we weren't really playing games together really. They were all on PC and I didn't have one, but Sea of Thieves was a great chance for us because I could play on my brother's Xbox and they could play on PC. After reviews were solid, me and one of my best friends got the game a week or two after it launched, and we played for 13 straight hours with only a tiny dinner break. 13 hours is an obscene amount of time for anybody to do anything, but it was especially crazy because this kid was the poster child of unmedicated ADHD. Soon after, one of our other friends joined us, and then his little brother, and we became a crew. Captain Algy's crew, named after Oscar Wilde's Algernon from The Importance of Being Earnest, because a production of it at our high school is where most of us met each other. Then, for at least the next year, every weekend, we would hop on and play for hours at a time into the wee hours of the morning. I probably saw more sunrises in that year than the rest of my life combined. Regardless of the game, this kind of time would bring anybody closer. But Sea of Thieves had a special sauce that I don't think it has anymore. Precisely because it was so simple. Barren was the first word that came to mind, but it has more of a negative connotation than I'd like to imply. Yes, Sea of Thieves did not have a ton of content at launch, but the foundation itself was so much fun that we didn't care. We were perfectly content to just play the game for the fun of playing it, never yearning for much more than the thrill of adventure. The simple joy of being a pirate was captured perfectly, but because it was simple, there was space to breathe. Space to think, talk, to know each other. You spend a lot of time sailing in the game, and more than any other game I've played, traveling is a process. Most games would be torn apart if travel was such a passive endeavor, but Sea of Thieves feels just right. You never lose embodiment of your character like you do in Assassin's Creed 4. You never become the ship. You never control the whole thing, you just get to interact with parts of it. This means that you do have to labor to keep the ship efficient and on course, but you also spend a lot of time doing nothing. Nothing but breathing in the salty air, talking to your crewmates until you reach your destination, playing a jig together, or drinking tankard after tankard until the captain tells us to handle the sails and we're too drunk to make it above deck. On paper, this might sound boring, and some people do find it so, but Sea of Thieves is a social game, and playing it with a group of friends that you're getting to know, traveling is just hanging out. Nobody's too focused on the gameplay to have an earnest conversation, and mixed with the regular 4 a.m. night, we started to get to know each other real well. To this day, these are my best friends in the world. And honestly, it's impossible to imagine anybody else ever knowing me like that. And I don't think that would have happened without Sea of Thieves. Nostalgia is not the only reason I remember those early days fondly, though. There are actually quite a few legitimate reasons to miss earlier incarnations of the game. While the constant flow of new quest types, enemies, and mechanics is a great thing for the game's longevity and overall health, it does mean that it is less approachable than it used to be. This sort of thing happens with a lot of frequently updated, long-running games, but there's so much stuff to keep track of. I mean, look how many menus track progression. A lot of the new quests are really cool, but the original quests are not really worth doing anymore unless you have a very short time to play. It's not uncommon for games like this to undermine previous elements or updates. Destiny 2 is a criminal offender in this regard because the solution has been deleting entire chunks of the game forever. But it still kinda stings. There's also something to be said for the fact that I have like 700 hours in the game. While I miss the early simplicity, I wouldn't want to play it like that now. I bled that game dry in the first few years, even keeping a notebook of which islands had what animals. I had near encyclopedic knowledge of the game and its secrets, almost all of which we were learning as a crew. We didn't spend time on wikis or watching tutorials, we learned the game very naturally. These days, I don't have time to keep up with the game in the same way, and as a result, I'm pretty out of touch with a lot of the smaller changes in the PvP meta. For a good while after launch, my crew was genuinely a threat. We're far outclassed after so much time away, but back in the day, we were a ship to be feared. Rarely bested in ship-to-ship combat, excellent at deception and trickery, and brilliant role players.
Jump if you're super sorry and you're so sorry and you want to kneel down to me and kiss me and you're so sorry. Just jump if that applies to you.
We were dangerous. Before the Reapers existed, we were an unstoppable specter haunting the waves. So part of what I miss is being among the best. And with time and practice, maybe we could get back there, but that ship has sailed, if you'll excuse the pun. We're all in various stages of our early 20s, and we can't spend the kind of time we used to on games. So missing the simplicity of the game and missing the simplicity of life at the time, they go hand in hand. The game has also had a notable aesthetic shift. The atmosphere of the game is different than it used to be. It's more rambunctious and flashy, and with each new update, it shifts further and further away from the more grounded approach of the game at launch. With each new wave of cosmetics, it feels like they have a need to outdo themselves and get really wacky with some of this stuff. And some of the Fortnite-esque designs don't necessarily mesh with what I think of as the game's early aesthetic. I don't think this is a bad thing. I don't think the devs should feel restricted to keeping a singular image of the game, but there was something really special about the calm simplicity I felt in those early years. The game has always been silly, but I think the more outlandish it gets, the less immersed I feel in the world and the more conscious I am that I am playing a live service video game. In the beginning, it was a realistic-ish world with some supernatural elements tucked away, but the game has firmly shifted into a highly fantastical realm with magic and monsters. It also feels more video gamey than ever with all the goofy cosmetics and emotes, and those have always existed. There's just a lot more now. I don't think Rare has ruined the game or anything, I'm just glad I was there at the start. The game has had to assimilate to some industry trends, and I'm grateful to have experienced the rawest version of the game. Speaking of the start, that first year was magical. Possibly my favorite day on the Sea of Thieves was the day Megalodons first released. They're so cemented into the game at this point that it's hard to remember a time when they didn't exist, but there was indeed such a time. Before Megs launched, the seas were exclusively violent. If you saw another crew, they were a threat to be either taken down or avoided. But Megs introduced alliances, and the shift in the community culture was palpable. The original Megalodon could only be summoned by 5 people playing the summoning song together. You simply could not do it with one crew. And these days, the game is much more focused on making sure that all of the content is accessible to everyone, whether or not they want to play with other people. But back in the day, being forced to work with other crews was profound. I've not been in the early days of any live service game like this, so this was a culture shift that was unlike anything I've ever experienced. No update since has ever captured that feeling or exhibited such influence on the psychology of the player base. While the Meg update obviously introduced new content, the novelty of the update was way more about how it updated the interpersonal experience of the game. And that's not the kind of thing that you can just make happen anymore, especially with such a large player base. Later that year, when The Devil's Roar came out, it was a new frontier for the community. It inspired the explorer in me the same way the launch of the game did. The first year of updates really felt like expansions of the world that begged players to immerse themselves and explore. Today, I am very conscious of every new update as video game stuff. More mechanical and less naturalistic, but also more convenient. OG Sea of Thieves could be pretty cryptic and obscure sometimes, and this was surely a barrier for a lot of people, but I loved not knowing how to immediately engage with new content, having to explore the world and figure out how new moving parts worked. I loved exploring. Since the shift to the season model, I think that element of exploration has unfortunately sunk. Though that might just be my bias as someone who is no longer invested the way I used to be. But it feels like I'm just crossing things off of a list rather than exploring. It's hard for me to know if this is because I have changed or if the game has shifted in a direction that doesn't really support this. Perhaps it's a mix of both. But one of the things I miss most about the old game is the peace. I have so many memories from not doing anything. I have this beautiful screenshot of me and my captain when rowboats first came out, and the obvious thing to do was see how far we could make it on the open ocean. Playing instruments together as we sail, ending the night with a drink at the tavern before logging off, or just sitting on the shore and staring at the water for minutes without doing anything else. We had a very relaxed experience. When we play now, we still have some of those fun moments, but mostly it feels like we're hurrying around, trying to be as efficient as possible, accomplish as many tasks as we can, and God, we're so far behind. Look at how many things we've left undone. The pressure of all of these objectives is always casting a shadow over me. But it isn't just the game. I've changed too. I am a little older, a little less patient, and there's a lot more to buy in the game, so I need to make more money. The novelty is gone, and so the peace is gone as well. Even if the game was restored to its condition at launch, would I be able to relax again? What is this video really about? While there are some actual reasons to miss the game's original direction and simplicity, it's mostly about me. It's because I have changed, my world has changed, and every day can't be your first day. The play The Effect by Lucy Preble struggles with the endurance of love. Our two protagonists meet at a clinical trial for a new antidepressant, a drug that raises dopamine, a brain chemical linked to new and exciting experiences. The crux of the conflict is this question of what is real love. These two characters, Connie and Tristan, fall in love, but how can they trust that feeling if it could have been caused by this drug? Is the feeling true but being enhanced by the drug? Is love even real? Is it just a collection of biological responses that we rationalize as a feeling? If this love is chemically induced, is it less real or worthwhile than so-called natural love? And even then, is it sustainable? If falling in love is tied to a rush of chemicals in the brain because of novelty, how do you stay in love? I have loved Sea of Thieves for 6 years. I don't love it the way I did in that first, second, or even third year. I'm not sure if my love has lessened or if it's just changed. Games are also kind of different than they used to be. The industry is trying so hard to make us all play the same games for years and years on end. We have lengthened the life cycle of a video game. Medical science has made it so we all live longer, but it takes no fucking responsibility for the fact that we have to stay married longer. We could use the help. The play is also deeply interested in the expansion of the human life cycle and what that is actually meant for us. Love, whether it be for people, hobbies, or a specific video game, is not easy to maintain indefinitely. We are chemically doomed to grow distant from the things we love. Familiar, comfortable experiences don't spike dopamine the way chance encounters do. Playing Sea of Thieves after 6 years doesn't feel like exploring a brave new world for 13 hours on your first day, and yet, I love Sea of Thieves. I just love it differently now. I often wonder if I'm cut out for lifelong love, or if our chemical disposition is too much for me to surmount. It seems like a Herculean effort to even live until even 60, but then to love for that long? Getting and staying married for more of your life than you lived single is the norm in America, and 6 years in, I can't help but long for Sea of Thieves 1.0. How the hell could I maintain a lifelong relationship? And I see all of these middle-aged couples online and how much they seem to resent each other, and I just worry. Have we made our lives too long to enjoy them? What actually is love? When I think of loving somebody or something, I think of that first period, that heightened dopamine. When we think about love as the first weekend with a new video game, or the first drive in a new car, your first kiss with a lover, the experience of feeling something that you have never experienced before. But that feeling has to give way to normalcy again. Connie has a somewhat pessimistic view. I just think it comes and goes. There's a period of time, maybe enough to raise a child, and then, the few times I've ever loved anyone, they've always, at some point, they've written, "I love you," in the snow or the sand, on vacation, to me. And it's wonderful, but the next time it happens, or the next even, you think, oh, okay, again. And you think of the last time and what that meant, and just for it to get washed away or melt, or should we be trying to give our relationships steroids so that we can last until our 80s? Should we be trying to de-emphasize lifelong commitments? Have we evolved past the need for marriage? The Effect doesn't try to answer these questions. It offers different perspectives and things to think about, but it doesn't settle on one surefire solution. There are more questions than answers at the end, and very little of the play's musings are resolved with any conclusivity. But the ending of the play argues that it doesn't matter. At the end of it all, it tells us that the main characters have a love that is real. Chemically induced or not, it is real. Connie ultimately cares for Tristan in a way that only somebody in love could. The feeling is there, and the only thing you can do is move forward with it. It seems silly to draw a line between long-term romantic commitment and a silly pirate game, but 6 years of Sea of Thieves gives me hope. I love this game. I don't love it with the unbridled excitement I used to, or with the earnest passion, but I still love it. There are almost no games that I have played for 6 consistent years. It just feels like home. It's comforting. And even throughout all of our transformations, I love Sea of Thieves. Love is hard, and loving for a long time is harder, but standing on these shores and watching the sunlight ripple in the waves gives me hope that it's possible. I miss the old Sea of Thieves, but I love the current one.